Oh.
Right, hello everyone. Sorry that took an extra 5 minutes. We had the Brookie factor going on.
Standard technical difficulties.
Yeah, Peter knows.
You bunch of gayos.
Oh, we can.
Oh dear.
Right. She's just unmuting all of us.
Yeah. So
Cool.
look, Pete, you've ruined it already.
Except for Brookie.
I think Peter needs one of those while he travels around the entire life. Just to
be muted. Sweet. Alright, yeah, there's a handful of people here. Anyway, sorry about that, guys. Looks like, I don't know where it's the time over there, Peter. Nice and early, mate. Is that?
Use your fingers. 8 in the morning. There you go.
I love how you've got us behind you as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Look.
Look at that.
Thought we were going to send that to me mum.
Oh, that's amazing.
I was going to go to Marcus in the States, but I couldn't get it in my suitcase.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Is that where you like us though there, Peter? Behind you.
Say that again?
Is that where you like us, mate? Right behind you.
Oh, yes. I've been bummed by all three of you in the past.
All righty.
We only have a couple. Where's everyone? Well, let's go over a couple of things, actually. If we're going to go over just some stuff relating to test jumping, how we started out, how we got to where we were, what prototyping and R&D is like now. A few of the other Chris's are going to cover that sort of stuff. If you have a question, if you click on the bottom and you click the participants list, then you can also see there's a raise hand button, a little blue button. So if you have a question and you want to ask us, we can do that, and then our admin Maria will unmute you and you can fire away, or alternatively you can just write the message in the chat box. So make sure you've got the chat box open on the right hand side. Yeah, but that's pretty much it, guys. It's good to have a couple of people here, and we will start by introducing ourselves, I guess, for those of you that don't know. I am Chris Stewart, one of the three Chris's, one leg of the tripod of Chris's. I've been at NZA now, I think, for 5 years or so. I've done about 8,000 jumps, a combination of camera, tandems, and competition jumps, and a very small handful of free fly jumps. I guess, what canopy am I jumping right now? Well, usually a Petra or whatever prototype I can get my hands on, I guess. That's pretty much it for me. I'm from New Zealand. I'm the only Chris from New Zealand. Yeah. And then next we have Snelly. Snelly can tell us a bit about himself.
Yep. So, one of the other Chris's, I guess. Been with New Zealand Aerosports just over 3 years now, but I've been living in New Zealand for about 6.5 years. Started out just packing out a drop zone over here and doing the rigging and stuff, and then apparently I had to get a real job, so I made the move to NZA. Started out mainly doing QC, quality control stuff, production work, and then worked my way through. Now working as part of the production team lead, and also part of the test team. So a lot of what I do is based around taking the prototypes from Julian and working them into making them actually a feasible, sellable product. Done about 1,800, 1,900 jumps, somewhere around there. Mainly fun jumping and test jumps. Never did a tandem rating or anything like that. So yeah, that's about me. And then I guess we've got the other Chris, Brookie, who's looking a little bit like Darth Maul or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, I gotta be careful of my hair. But anyway, so yeah, my background is I started jumping in 2007. I did 1,100 jumps in my first year. I was a bit of a jump hog. I moved to New Zealand in 2011. That's kind of roughly around about when I started working for NZ Aerosports. I've done about 10,000 jumps now, most of them test jumping, a lot of free fly. When I first turned up to Aerosports, my role was literally thrown straight in the deep end. It was Petra that was kind of needing a bit of attention, and we sort of turned it into a product. I've done some other stuff in the factory too, like QS, sort of QC type stuff, and been part of the early developments of the refining of the processes that go with developing new parachutes, sort of all the way through from Petra. So yeah, that's me.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I don't actually own a canopy right now, so I'm just jumping whatever's in the test bin.
Currently not a lot right now.
No, well, there is, but we just can't get to it.
Yeah. I guess you guys kind of covered that. How did you start at NZA? How did you actually get your job, Brookie? You were just a beatnik transient skydiver like most of us, weren't you?
Yeah, I was sort of cruising through and sort of just, I was at the right place at the right time. I happened to be dating someone that worked there too. And I sort of fell into a role that just, I was kind of right person, right time. And it's kind of, that was it really. And it just went from there. And I kind of, next product that came along, kind of got lucky and got to jump that. And it was good.
What was you kind of covered yours a little bit, Brookie, but sorry, Snelly, but you were up in the Bay of Islands.
Yeah, so when I got to New Zealand, actually, within the first 48 hours of being in New Zealand, I actually woke up with a fucking horrific hangover on Gyro's couch. So that was kind of my introduction to getting to New Zealand. Just went for a beer at the factory, and next minute, it was down Ponsonby getting hammered somewhere. But yeah, so pretty much I actually was down in Taupo for the first 5 months, just packing down there, and then there was a position came up to move to the Bay of Islands, so I spent about 2.5 years working at the drop zone there, mainly packing but also doing camera flying, and I was the rigger there for a little while, so just taking care of all the gear, making sure everything was all good. I actually did my rigging ticket over in the States probably 4, 5, 6 years ago. No, longer than that. I've been here 6. So what's that? 7 years ago, maybe. So yeah, I actually found the rigging side of things quite interesting, which is kind of why making a move to Aerosports has been really good. Actually getting to put those skills to good use, and every day's a school day. Just been learning shitloads as we go. It's been awesome.
Yeah, nice, man. And then I think it was Brookie and Shannon who asked me to work 2012. And it started off with, do you want to do some videos and a little bit of test jumping? I remember I showed up and Attila, the general manager, was just like, oh, we don't know if there's going to be enough to keep you here full time and whatnot. But, you know, we'll try and keep you going. And that was 5 years ago. And there's just, generally, until this pandemic, there's been an abundance of work. So worked out pretty well, man, for sure. For me, I'm stoked with the job. And I guess actually speaking about the job, like what people envision test jumping is and the reality. Like I guess I can go first. And for example, I started my first year and it was like test jumping, awesome. Oh. And a couple years after Petra, I was like, right, that's nice. We're going to be jumping crazy little prototypes. And then I spent my first summer at Aerosports test jumping Sapphire 3s. I think the smallest one I got to jump all year was a 149. So I was living the dream. It was absolutely crazy. But obviously, like a lot of what I did for my first year wasn't tiny little canopies. It wasn't extreme tiny prototypes. It was big beginner intermediate canopies, which obviously, you know, you have to go through the R&D process as well. What about you, Brookie?
So I turned up right at the point where Petra was still a prototype, kind of pending becoming anything on anything marketable or sellable. It needed a lot of refinement, and so I was sort of jumping the early ZP versions, and we were trying to make those a product. And they weren't bad, but there were a few that would come along that would have flutter issues, and there's a lot of head scratching going on, and tried all kinds of different stuff. And you got to remember that this isn't too far past when one of the prototypes in Dubai collapsed. So we had a lot to think about with the terms of the design and what we were content with releasing as well. So I went through an interesting phase. And as we progressed and learned a bit more, I guess making the nacelle canopy exclusively made much more sense. It performed better, it was more stable. And we went through some refinements along that road for a while, and tweaking things. We sent a few out for people to try and got some feedback. And I was test jumping almost all the canopies, all the Petras before they went out to customers. And even though these guys are super capable swoopers, probably way more capable than I was, but they were still professionals, and they needed a product that we knew was safe for them to receive. So that was the initial kind of introduction to it all. And I definitely had some interesting moments, but I learned a lot through that, and I was I would say, thrown in the deep end pretty quickly, but it was a huge progression curve for me. And from there, we started learning from the things that we put in the prototypes from Petra and all the design refinements we've made. And it became obvious to us that we could use these in other products, and so it sort of led to prototype layers and all the kind of stuff that followed in succession from there. Yeah.
Nice. I remember actually when I started, and just going back to like how I had the Sapphire 3s being like, oh, this sucks. Brookie started and you got to jump to Petra prototypes and everything. And now when I'm glad I wasn't a part of that in a way, because there was some terrifying times. It was all so new, I guess, that a lot of what everyone was like, it had never been done before. So you had no idea, as you see from some of our videos from the summer.
Well, we were sort of the very early jumps on the prototypes, even before it became anything called Petra, was done by Attila and Richie and a handful of others. And those guys were kind of pioneering it, and they were really completely unaware of what the changes they would make were. There was some relative idea from the software, but it wasn't going to give you anything definitive until you were under a parachute and you were facing what was happening there and then. And watching some of those videos, some of you have seen them, some of you haven't, but they've been shared around a while. And they make the hair stuff back of your neck stand up, what these guys are up to. And I'm sure if you ever get a chance to sit down and have a beer or anything with Richie and Attila, it's worthwhile. They've got some good war stories.
Yeah. And what about you, Sally? How has the R&D process been from your point of view? I was
going to say, actually, for me, starting test jumping was, I was working in the factory, like I say, mainly doing production stuff. And I figured doing test jumping is pretty much the only way to get the fuck out of the office in the middle of the week. So that was pretty much my excuse to try and find something to jump. So, but basically, although I don't have anywhere near as much experience as these guys jumping, obviously having some really good mentors around me has definitely helped. But yeah, basically, like I say, I work a lot between Julian, who's our designer, and the production team, actually trying to build the things. Sometimes Julian comes up with some weird and wonderful ideas, some of which are not particularly practical. So it's actually good for me to work closely with him and the production team to actually try and make some of these ideas a reality. So it's also good to be part of that process, and then also have the opportunity to head out to the drop zone and actually go test jump some of the new ideas, modifications, different ways of building the canopies, different construction types, where we actually bolt the things together. It's good to actually get out there and actually sit under canopy, have a look up, and make sure that the path that we're on is actually somewhere that we're looking to go. So,
yeah, well, I think it's good as well that, like, one of the things that you would think having thousands of jumps all the time helps the most, which, when shit goes wrong, it definitely does. But in terms of like with you having, I think we've spoken about this as well, having 1,800 jumps, which by comparison maybe not so many, but in terms of some of the prototypes we put out, you're kind of the core market that we need to get feedback from. Whereas with Brookie and I, it does become hard sometimes, especially when you're current on like a Petra or another small prototype, a super high performance prototype, and your kind of feedback is, it's a bit slow, which is not.
Absolutely.
It's
So
kind of
and I think I said it when we were doing the Christmas tapes, like the Anna project, although it's still going on, has definitely been the most fun for me. Because like you say, it's definitely the target market for kind of my skill level. Like I can jump layer, but anything beyond that, like I don't jump slayers or petras or the P2 or anything like that. So for me, working on the Anna project is also, it's keeping me current. It's pushing my abilities. But then it's also getting to help develop something that's super fun to fly.
Yeah, no, man, for sure. I guess, Brookie, you're the most experienced with this as well. You've been doing it the longest. When people, like, I know people that, like a lot of people there, they're probably asking, they've heard about Anna and they know that we're trying to work on P2, and then there's rumors of a couple of other canopies. But the actual process, it's kind of nice. You can explain to the handful of people that are in here why it takes so long. Like, what's the process? It's not, we have a parachute, we jump it and say it's good. Like, what does it go through kind of thing?
No, I mean, to go all the way from the very beginning of a concept that, okay, so, you know, we identify a gap in the market that we need to fulfill, and then that will go to Julian, and Julian will kind of start designing the canopy around the parameters that he thinks will suit that need. And that's quite a, you know, that's not a simple process in itself. That requires paramorphic metalling and CFD. And then once it's come out and we've got some figures and some ideas of what the canopy is like to perform, we cut it, and then we'll put it together. But the thing we put together is, we don't know if it's going to work. Be that a Sapphire 3 or a Crossfire 3 or a Petra 2, whatever you want to call it. We have to go and test that concept first. So, you know, it'll go, we'll go out to the drop zone and we'll jump it, and that's the very beginning. We really, like, it might be a complete lemon. It might not open, you know, properly. It's not something we look for straight away, but we have to factor that in. But if it's flying, we have to make sure it's a stable canopy. That's the first thing we're looking for. And then going down, like, how does it feel on rears and toggles and all those important bits of information that we have to take back to Julian, and not try and overwhelm him, but come back with something that we feel we have some decent feedback on. And we might get down and go, okay, you know, we modify the brakes on this bit, or try changing the trim, or we might even just scrap it completely and go, right, let's bung another cell in there, or take a cell out, or go up and get some pictures of the different parts of the shaping, and then that goes through another refinement process that we'll find ourselves maybe changing the cut file. It'll go between Julian and Snelly, and all these things take time. And, you know, we're slotting this in between a relatively small production team, and that has, you know, implications as well. You know, we're lucky to work for a company that's R&D focused, and we do get a lot of time to focus on new designs and new wings. But even when we're getting to a stage where we feel like we've got something that fits the need in the market, we then have to build an array of different sizes and get them out to people, and spend months and months and months getting feedback from them. And we might have an issue that's identified at 300-400 jumps, and then we have to go back again and go, right, okay, let's try and change this, and then send them back out again, and then go through that whole process of going, right, when do we call it quits? And I think when we feel like we've got a product that everyone is coming back with thumbs up, and it meets the target need, and we don't need to change anything on it, then we can start building some more in-house, and doing product release videos, and then start shipping them out. So there's quite a lot to it. I mean, I've only really skimmed over that. But
yeah, definitely. The process
process
can be extremely long, and I guess we're kind of going through one of them now. And how you were talking about, we have lemons, you know, like anything R&D, in any industry, you would have a lemon, and we sort of have a graveyard full of dead lemons.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. We have a
Down in
whole
the
room.
basement. Horrendous.
Yeah.
Actually, while we're on the subject of that, there's actually a question in the sidebar from Henry. Do you use an intentional cutaway type rig when first jumping something new, or do you just send it?
You can answer that one, but you know what? To be honest, we kind of it's not the smartest thing to do all the time. But on the bigger stuff, you can get away with it quite safely, especially when it's iterations to a prototype that we already know is somewhat working. But we do currently we have a tertiary rig, is what it's called, that was designed with Chris Brook and Brett Newman in Australia. Brookie flew over, and it's a pretty solid system. Unfortunately, it was packed up and ready to go, and we were about to write a manual and everything on it, and then some dickhead ate a raw bat. So we ended up with coronavirus, and yeah, there was a few things. Like I think I was coming back from the States. We had a couple prototypes that were put on the back burner as well because of all of this going on. But for sure, we haven't had one until very recently. Absolutely, it's something that is on our priority list, and it was a matter of just getting it put through the health and safety sort of rigmarole and all that sort of stuff. But
and actually getting something that was exactly what we needed and not going to make things more dangerous by involving more gear and procedures and all of that. The only point of having that kind of setup is to actually make it more safe rather than overcomplicate things and end up with a 3 out or something horrendous.
It's a pretty solid system, though. I think it's nice. It's simple for what it achieves, but we just need to go through the paperwork now.
Cool. And actually, while we're on the subject of questions, there's another one here from Matt. He's asking, where does the Anna canopy fit into the lineup, and who is the target market? So I guess I could probably answer that one because that's me. It's basically gonna. I don't want to use the phrase JVX replacement because it's definitely not a JVX replacement. It's very much a different canopy. But the target market is definitely to sit in between the JFX2 and the layer. And the original Annas that we were making and jumping, obviously Julian, he's very, very good at making things very, very good. So with the original design, we felt it was way too close to the layer in design and performance. So it's actually a lot of the time's been spent making sure that we're dialing it back to make sure it fits into the right target market. Obviously, there's no point in having a canopy that's so close to something else as that's not really helping anyone. So we want to make sure that we're getting that canopy nicely in the middle between the JFX2, stepping up on your way down to a layer and then the Petra.
I think as well, like we would all agree, Brookie, as well, that like the layer is, it's still a pretty advanced beast. Yeah, it's been out for a couple of years, but some people aren't willing to make that step from a JFX2 to the layer, and some people might not want to push beyond much of a JFX2, but the Anna kind of sits in that void quite nicely. I've definitely had a lot of people ask me about it. I'm sure you have, Brookie, with your travels. But that's why it's perfect having Snelly to test it, because he's pretty much the core market. So his feedback is pretty much bang on what the target is going to be. Yeah.
But don't blame me for it taking so long. That's just
Hey, good things take time, fellas.
Question from Samantha. So Pete, I've unmuted you, so please go ahead and ask your question.
I have a question with what's the difference is going to be between the JFX2 and the Anno? The difference, Snelly?
From what I've jumped, I'm definitely feeling that it's got more of a dive than the JFX2. I don't think it recovers quite as quickly. Although when we bought, I didn't have a lot of jumps on the original JFX, but definitely felt like the JFX2 was a step up from the original JFX. One thing that I did notice is it recovers a little quicker than I prefer. I actually prefer something that holds a dive a little bit more. So by getting onto the Anna, I definitely feel that it holds that dive a little bit more. I want to say it's more responsive in the harness as well, but then I also don't get the twitchiness that I do. Like I say, not having heaps of experience on the layer, I definitely feel more comfortable just cruising in the harness on the Anna. I don't feel that it's quite as twitchy, but then when I'm actually going to set up for my turn, I've definitely got all the power and momentum that I need to get into that dive for my final turn.
Oh, what's it feel like getting back from something like a deep spot or something like that? Because that's where the JFX2 is awesome and the layer's awesome for it,
Yeah, I was going to say all the canopies that we work on, we definitely want to make sure that people are getting back from long spots. Obviously, in an ideal world for us canopy pilots, maybe we're just going to do hop and pops all day and that'd be great. And you're right over the top of the drop zone. But in reality, people are out doing camera jumps, AFF, all of that kind of stuff. So we know that people are going to end up long, potentially on some of those jumps. So as part of the process, we always make sure that we want to develop our canopies to keep people being able to recover from long spots. So it's definitely always a factor we consider.
Cool. And I'll ask the question that everybody's probably thinking, and asked many a frigging times, to be perfectly honest, when the fucking thing coming out?
I'll answer, wait, let me answer that. I'll answer that if you can tell us when coronavirus is going away, Peter.
That's probably like fucking you building canopies, to be perfectly honest, isn't it? Well, especially anyway. Anyway, we're not getting into this conversation because there's other customers about it.
No.
But I was going to say, we're actually right before, obviously, all of this shit kicked off. We actually pulled out another iteration of Anna. Like Julian was actually over in New Zealand fairly recently, just for a real short time. But we actually got our heads together and spent a bit of time talking about the Anna. And we actually got another iteration of the Anna came out for us to test. And Stewie actually put the initial, I think you did like 8 jumps on it.
Yeah, I always get to do the theory jumps. It's awesome.
You're welcome. And then I actually managed to get 4 on it right before basically the world went nuts. So the 4 jumps that I did on it were really, really promising. It was definitely a change in aspect ratio of the canopy from what we were working on before, which has really improved stability in flight, but also there's a topic of counter steer, which I know has definitely been happening on that canopy particularly, and like it's been talked about a little bit on other canopies as well. But yeah, so the modifications that we made, we actually really did well at addressing that particular issue on it. Obviously, there's still a long way to go getting some more jumps on it, but yeah, it felt really promising. So I can't wait to get back and get back in the sky on that one.
Yeah, no, that one was a good, because I got to do the first 8 jumps on that. That one was bloody good. Bloody good. Yeah. It was nice. It was good. Like the way we work is we basically, Julian has an idea of how something works, and then we go and jump it and say, you're a bit off here, this, and this. And then he figures out how to change it basically. So yeah.
It's looking like we've just got a little bit less than 10 minutes left. So if you guys have got any more questions, feel free to put those into the group chat on the side. And also, I think Maria is going to drop a link in there, which is going to be for the upcoming webinars. Stewie, is that?
Yeah, we'll go over that at the end. But there you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So there'll be more of these guys. There's Mason Corby tomorrow. He's Aussie Free Fly load organizer, and he'll be talking about head-up tracking for days tomorrow. Just go to the Woogie page on the event page on Facebook, and you'll be able to see all the time, see everything upcoming. But yeah. Did anyone have any more R&D questions? Are they curious? You can straight up just ask us when a product's coming out. Peter did. He didn't hold back.
Sorry about that. I didn't really want to put you in a sticky position there, boys.
No,
if we had the answer, we'd give it to you, but we don't, and we're keen to do it as well. Because basically, once it's ready, we get to go and film the release video, which is probably the best fun part about making
I know that. I know that. I was there when you did the JFX too. Remember?
That's right. For people who don't know, Peter was he was initiated as a testie. He didn't legally change his name to Chris, so he got booted off the team pretty quick.
Yeah. There's only really one prerequisite, and that's be called Chris.
You've got to be called Chris, or you're not on the testie team. We tried
don't worry about that. Maybe
we got rid of him.
That might be in the pipelines in the future.
Yeah. Depends how much you want, bro.
I've got one more question about trying to bridge the gap between the Crossfire 3 and the JFX 2. Is that something you're going to be potentially working on or looking at in the future, or because at the minute it's quite a big jump, if from my opinion. I mean, everybody else's opinion is probably different to mine, but it's quite a big gap to be jumping now from a JFX 2 to, oh sorry, Crossfire 3 to a JFX 2.
Rookie, do you want to field that one? We've if full I guess disclosure would be we've had a few prototypes for that gap to be bridged, and then basically we've been focusing on other projects as well. Not that I'm saying the company's making the wrong decision in any way. I agree. I think most of us would agree there is a gap between the Crossfire 3 and the JFX 2, and it definitely seems to be where we see a lot of our jumpers, our customers, tending and leaning towards the way of a katana, because in their minds there is nothing else to jump. So completely my own personal opinion, I would agree with you, Peter. I think there's a little bit of a gap there. It is a big step. It's not impossible, but it's not the right step for everyone.
And also back in the kind of original days where we were going down the road of redesigning the Crossfire 2, we ended up at 2 points. We ended up with something that was so advanced that it would have never met the criteria of what we were looking for, and the Crossfire 3, which was what we actually needed to replace. At the time, we couldn't just devote all our resources to going, right, we'll do this, and this. We have to pick and choose our time quite carefully, and the marketing team kind of dictates as much as the production and R&D department dictate where we go. They all have to work in kind of a bit of a synergy together, and if that isn't there, there's no time to just necessarily plug the gap in every single hole. But there's always that on the back burner for us. There's always that option to go back and revisit those designs. We had some amazing prototypes, but they're a little way off products, but they're not forgotten. They're just on hold, like we all are.
Well, so we've got about 4 minutes left here, guys. We're going to run in. There's a couple more questions. Someone can answer one of the other Chris's if you want to answer this. How good is the JFX2 opening if you compare it with the other canopies from different companies? I'm assuming that's going to be compared to maybe PD. It's a weird question. It's not a weird question. It's a fair question. It's kind of hard to answer. We don't test PD canopies or fluid wings or Aerodyne canopies. And
I think the answer they're probably looking for is like a comparison with a similar platform, regardless of whether it comes from PD or not. Is a 7-cell cross brace, and a 7-cell cross brace. Early on, and you had roughly two choices. You had an FX and the velocity when they were both stacked against each other. And as time has gone on, the velocity has been an amazing wing for PD for a long time, and it's still a great parachute. And I think that with the openings, when we decided to refine the JFX2, it was something that we felt completely hands off with. My experience with velos, this is just my experience, it's personal. This isn't just a generalization for everyone to jump on, but I found I had to fly the openings a bit more. Like I had to kind of have control of the rear rises pretty quickly. Whereas with the JFX2, I haven't had that. I still do it out of habit, but I haven't had that.
You would say it's on rails, because I've done, the first 2,500 jumps I did on cross brace canopies were on velos, and I would definitely agree you had to fly the openings. Not that I wasn't that opposed to it. I just thought that was just how my cross brace canopy opened. I didn't think anything of it until maybe you move on to other canopies that are a little less searchy and a little less kind of inclined to throw you around. Right, so we got another question. We're running out of time here, guys. So we'll try and get through this one as well. It says that the layer is recommended doing 500 plus jumps at a 2+ wing loading. So that's on top of your other requirements. For someone who is 60 kg, how much under 2-point wing loading could you go to still meet the requirements? For lighter people, I think. So for lighter people, if you have that experience, but like to get that 2+ wing loading, you're going to have to go sub 50 or sub 60, which for a lot of people is a massive, that's huge, it's tiny, which is a massive step. Brookie, do you want to try to field that one?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to, I'll try and wrap this up as quickly as possible, but like, you're not just downsizing in terms of like the physical size of the canopy is changing, but also the characteristics of the canopy. If you load 2 canopies at different sizes at the same wing loading, they're going to behave differently. And so once you get down to these smaller size, even regardless if your wing loading is lighter on those wings, you're still going to fundamentally be flying a 60 square foot parachute. twitchy and it's not going to behave at the same size as someone who's loading it the same on say 79. You have to be like, yeah, that's a very small step, and there's a reason we cap them at a certain size, because regardless of how tiny you are, they're still.
Sorry guys, we're starting to run out of time. I'm just going to unmute everybody. Please say hello, some common parts, collective fuck yes, and wherever you are.
Thanks, guys. Fuck yeah!
Cheers, guys. Be safe. Stay at home and all that jazz.
Yeah. Don't be stupid.
Don't be
Do it
drinking
right
red
now.
wine, fucking coffee or tea.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Right. Cheers, guys. Thanks for spawning.
Thanks everyone. Tune in again.
Cool. I'm just waiting for everyone to hang up or to be kicked out of the room.
I was going to say, which is going to go first? Will everyone leave? Who'll get kicked out?
Good to see you again.